Welcome to Podcast Summaries, where every week we break down powerful ideas from 8 to 10 top podcasts to help you grow, heal, and thrive while saving time. If you find this summary helpful, please subscribe and check out links for more content. Your support keeps this journey going. Here is summarized version of 2028 Warning 3 Threats That Will Break America. Gavin Newsom, featuring Gavin Newsom by Stephen Bartlett. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom if he believes his life, and Gavin Newsom responds that if he had told his 10-year-old self that he would be running one of the most consequential states in America, he wouldn't have believed it. He says that he's not sure he wanted this life at 20 or 30, but he's deeply accountable and motivated now. Gavin Newsom shares that his early life was shaped by his single mother, who worked multiple jobs to support him and his sister. He talks about the anxiety and fear that came with not having much money and the stress of his mother's struggles. He also shares that he had severe learning disabilities, including dyslexia, which made it difficult for him to read and understand things. Gavin Newsom says that his mother never told him about his dyslexia, and he only found out about it when he was older. He appreciates that she didn't want him to use it as an excuse, but instead encouraged him to work hard and find ways to overcome his challenges. Gavin Newsom also talks about being bullied as a child and how he was called names like new scum. He says that he was a target for bullies because of his haircut and his Catholic school uniform. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about his challenges with alcohol, and Gavin Newsom responds that he shifted drinking as a way to self-medicate and escape from his problems. He says that he got into the wine business as a way to connect with his father, who was an alcoholic. Gavin Newsom talks about his business ventures, including his wine store and restaurants. He says that he shifted his business with just one employee, and it grew to have 22 businesses and 1,000 employees at its peak. He also talks about his failure award scheme, where he gave employees $500 for trying new things and taking risks, even if they failed. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about the importance of taking initiative and embracing failure in business. Gavin Newsom shares a story about a night clerk at one of his hotels who, on his own initiative, decided to buy catfish to eat the mosquito larvae in the ponds around the hotel. Although the plan backfired, with raccoons having a feeding frenzy and running through the hotel with fish in their mouths, Newsom saw the value in the clerk's initiative and created a failure award to encourage employees to take risks and try new things. Newsom explains that this approach empowered his employees and allowed the business to thrive. He notes that it's not about being reckless, but about taking calculated risks and being open to learning from mistakes. Stephen Bartlett reflects on the importance of this lesson for business owners, especially in today's rapidly changing times. Newsom also talks about the influence of Tom Peters' book, The Pursuit of Wow, on his business philosophy. He emphasizes the importance of finding superstar leaders, developing ownership among frontline employees, and advancing diversity as a business essential. Newsom's business became focused on creating a sense of awe and surprise, with a culture of iteration and daring energy. Stephen Bartlett asks Newsom about his transition from business to politics. Newsom shares the story of how he received a phone call from Willie Brown, the mayor of San Francisco, who appointed him to the Parking and Traffic Commission. Newsom was just 26 years old at the time and had no experience in politics. He threw himself into the role and eventually became the president of the commission. Newsom's experience as a business owner and entrepreneur served him well in politics. He applied the same principles of initiative, risk-taking, and innovation to his work as a politician. He notes that his business background gave him a unique perspective and allowed him to approach problems in a different way. Stephen Bartlett asks Newsom about his decision to enable same-sex couples to get married in San Francisco, despite opposition from his own party. Newsom was moved by the experience of a couple who came into his wine store and told him that they had just gotten engaged. He decided to take a stand and start marrying same-sex couples, despite the risks. Newsom's decision was met with opposition from his own party, but he stood firm. He notes that it was a defining moment in his political career and one that he is proud of. He also reflects on the impact that his mother's illness and death had on his life and career. Newsom's mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and eventually passed away, with Newsom by her side. He notes that her death was a difficult experience, but one that ultimately shaped him into the person he is today. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about his final conversations with his mother before she passed away. Gavin Newsom shares that his mother's last words to him were "Don't forget me," which has stuck with him to this day. He also talks about how he wishes he could have thanked her for being an extraordinary parent and how he's proud of the person he's become, including being a good husband and father. Gavin Newsom reflects on his past mistakes, including an extramarital affair, and how he's learned from them. He also talks about how he's worked to reconcile with those he's hurt and how he's proud of the progress he's made. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about the struggles young men face in the modern world, particularly in terms of finding purpose and meaning. Gavin Newsom shares that his wife has done work on the crisis of boys and men, highlighting issues such as suicide rates, deaths of despair, and educational attainment. He believes that the Democratic Party has been timid in addressing these issues, and that the Republican Party has exploited them for political gain. Gavin Newsom argues that the Democratic Party needs to own up to its mistakes and address the realities of the crisis facing young men. He's worked on an executive order to address issues around education and recruiting more men to become teachers. He believes that the party needs to show empathy and compassion towards young men and recognize the unique challenges they face. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom how the attitude towards men will shift if he becomes president. Gavin Newsom believes that the party needs to take responsibility and have a deeper reflection on why it's lost touch with young men. He thinks that the party needs to understand the complexities of the issue and not just rely on punditry and expert opinion. Stephen Bartlett wonders if America is doing well, and Gavin Newsom responds that the country is struggling with its identity. He believes that Trump has made Americans feel free to be their worst selves, and that the soul of America is struggling. Newsom worries about the state of the country's institutions and democracy, and fears that neighbors are turning on each other. He thinks that people are talking down to each other and forgetting the universal truth that everyone wants to be loved and respected. Newsom also shares his concerns about Trump's behavior, saying that he wants to take him down and enjoys sparring with him. He recalls a meeting with Trump where they had a cordial conversation, but Trump later made up a story about their meeting and federalized the National Guard. Newsom believes that Trump is playing a game and putting on a show, but it's becoming more dangerous and exhausting. When asked if Trump cares about anyone, Newsom responds that he only cares about himself. He thinks that Trump is a very different person now than he was in his first term, and that he feels no limits, and has a sense of megalomania. Newsom worries that Trump will try to stay in power and is concerned about the state of the country's democracy. He believes that Trump is pushing the boundaries of the rule of law and threatening to recall people he disagrees with. Newsom also mentions that Trump has been in contact with the Texas legislature to try and rig the game to stay in power. Newsom thinks that Trump's behavior is not just about being a president who makes changes and then leaves, but rather about trying to stay in power and undermine the country's democracy. He believes that Trump is testing the boundaries of what he can do and is pushing the courts and the Constitution to their limits. Newsom is deeply concerned about the state of the country's democracy and worries that Trump will try to stay in office in 2028. However, on the balance of probability, he thinks it's unlikely that Trump will stay in office, but he can see a scenario where Trump might try to stay in power. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom if he's hopeful that the Democratic Party will wake up in time to field a serious campaign that can compete with the prevailing narrative. Gavin Newsom responds that it's not about waiting for a savior, but rather about the work that needs to be done in the midterms, in the courts, and in the states. He emphasizes the importance of the rule of law and the role of citizens in shaping the country's future. Gavin Newsom shares his inspiration from the No King's Day protest, where 5 million people showed up on Trump's birthday to protest against authoritarianism. He quotes Justice Breyer, saying that in a democracy, the most important office is not the president, governor, or mayor, but the office of citizen. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom how he thinks the Democratic Party has done in appealing to entrepreneurs. Gavin Newsom acknowledges that the party has done terribly and that there's a perception that Democrats don't like entrepreneurs. He attributes this to the party's failure to make a strong case for entrepreneurship and business leaders. Gavin Newsom shares his admiration for entrepreneurs like Richard Branson and Elon Musk, saying that he's inspired by their success and audacity. However, he also acknowledges that the Democratic Party has a problem with begrudging other people's success, and that this needs to change. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about his attitude towards entrepreneurs like Elon Musk if he were to become president. Gavin Newsom responds that he would celebrate and revere their entrepreneurialism, acknowledging that the party needs to do a better job of supporting business leaders and creating an environment where people can succeed. The conversation turns to the topic of safety under Trump's presidency, with Stephen Bartlett asking if the world is safer now than it was under Biden. Gavin Newsom responds that it's not a binary issue and that there's nuance to it. He expresses concern about nuclear proliferation and AI, saying that the world is more unpredictable than it's been. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about his experience as Biden's chief surrogate during a difficult debate night. Gavin Newsom shares his concerns about Biden's performance, saying that he felt something was off when Biden walked on stage. He acknowledges that there were private conversations among Democrats about Biden's ability to continue as president. The conversation touches on the topic of Biden's decision to step down, with Stephen Bartlett asking if there's any truth to the narrative that Biden was pushed out by pressure from the party. Gavin Newsom confirms that there were conversations among Democrats about Biden's ability to continue, but emphasizes that Biden ultimately made the decision to step down himself. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom if he was considering stepping in to replace Biden, given the rumors that were circulating at the time. Gavin Newsom responds that he was loyal to Biden and didn't think about replacing him, even when his name was being mentioned as a potential candidate. However, he acknowledges that he was angry when Biden dropped out without giving him a heads up. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about the Democratic Party's decision to support Kamala Harris's candidacy without a heads up. Gavin Newsom responds that, in hindsight, it didn't work, but it's hard to say what could have been done differently given the short runway in the party's apparatus. He suggests that the party's biggest mistake is being consumed by individual personalities rather than focusing on the collective good. Stephen Bartlett presses Gavin Newsom on what the Democratic Party could have done differently, and Newsom emphasizes the importance of recognizing the party's weakness and projecting strength. He notes that Donald Trump exudes strength, even if it's weakness masquerading as strength, and that the Democratic Party appears weak to many people. Newsom suggests that the party needs to focus on building a narrative that resonates with people and inspires a sense of journey and aspiration. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom to redefine the Democratic Party from scratch, without any preconceptions or baggage. Newsom responds that he doesn't have a simple answer, but he's consumed by the idea of contribution and service, and the notion that we're all better off when we work together. He emphasizes the importance of a growth mindset and abundance, rather than a scarcity mindset. Stephen Bartlett notes that politics is often a battle between rationality and emotion, and that the Democratic Party struggles to recognize the emotional resonance of certain issues. Gavin Newsom agrees, citing the example of the toothpaste being locked up in a CVS store due to shoplifting by homeless people. He acknowledges that this is a complex issue that requires a comprehensive approach, including addressing the root causes of homelessness and providing supportive services. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about the Jeffrey Epstein case and the promises made by politicians to release the Epstein files. Newsom responds that someone lied to the public, either then or now, and that it's outrageous that the files haven't been released. He suggests that Trump may have been involved in covering up the truth, and that the Epstein case is a symptom of a larger problem of corruption and abuse of power. Stephen Bartlett asks Gavin Newsom about his personal beliefs and whether he's received a sign from beyond. Newsom shares a story about his father's passing and a peregrine falcon that appeared outside his window, which he takes as a sign. He emphasizes his connection to something bigger than himself and his desire for meaning and purpose. Stephen Bartlett thanks Gavin Newsom for his time and for being willing to have an unfiltered conversation. He notes that Newsom's willingness to engage with people from different perspectives is refreshing and that he's encouraged by the example Newsom is setting. Stephen Bartlett is fascinated by Gavin Newsom's unique approach to conversations, sitting down with people he often disagrees with and having open discussions. He praises Gavin's show, saying it's always engaging and has him hooked. Gavin is grateful for the opportunity to chat with Stephen. Stephen takes a moment to address his listeners, pointing out that a surprising 53% of regular listeners haven't subscribed to the show yet. He asks for their support by hitting the subscribe button, promising that he and his team will work hard to make the show better every week, listening to feedback and finding guests that listeners want to hear from. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, check out YouTube channel, and just remember, subscription is only £1 or $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.